So let's talk about the course. I think here we have, on the course, we have two main things that we're going to look at. Okay, we have field development and we have also operations. So in development, we have typically we have a clear objective. Our objective is to maximize project value. Okay, we have to maximize economic value, usually some sort of economic. Okay, we are not doing that for charity, or we are not, that's actually, we want to give energy to society, but also we have to make sure that it's profitable, otherwise we're going to go bankrupt. Okay, so that's the main goal that we have in field development, is to maximize economic value of a hydrocarbon exploitation project. Okay. But that's not the whole story. Okay, we have also to fulfill, and that's very important. Okay, that we can do that many ways. Okay, but we have to subject it to, and the things more important that we're going to discuss here. You might take other courses and you see that the politics are a bit constrained, the geographical constraints, the environmental constraints. Here we're going to talk technical constraints related to petroleum engineering. Okay? So say technical constraints. Okay? And here we say in general engineering, or we are going to discuss, focus mostly in this course in petroleum engineering. Okay, and also to HSE. Okay, I thought I was struggling between the initials in Norwegian and in English. So it's health, safety, and environment. Okay, you have to your operations, you have to make in with some HSE constraints. Okay, in a safe, environmentally friendly, and respecting the health of your workers in a manner that it's, so these are the two main and the biggest constraints we have for when developing the field. Okay, and there are two different mindsets, completely different, development and operations. Okay, okay, and this value actually you have is not only for everyone. Okay, not everyone is usually involved in that project, but it's for, you want to maximize that for the people that are the owners of that project, okay, which are the shareholders. It's a bit of a cold way to look at it, but actually that's how it works. You have some people that they are participating in that project even by injecting capital. You have some operators, you have an oil company, they are the shareholders, and you want to maximize that project to find a way to maximize the economic value for the shareholders, but while fulfilling with this constraint, which sounds like a small thing, but actually is what's shaping most of the project. Okay, and typically we have, so what are the steps for doing that? I'm going to make it very simplified here. Okay, we want to first to define, we have a series of steps. Okay, we have to, first the main thing is to design or decide on the main features of the field. Okay, and main features can mean many things, but basically is how I'm going to produce it, for how long I'm going to produce it, what rates I'm going to produce, what kind of pressure recovery strategy I'm going to use, to which market I'm going to sell, I'm going to send these products, what kind of platform I'm going to use. Yeah, something also a small, well, a big detail. Okay, our course is going to be focused on offshore oil and gas production. we are going to have some examples of onshore, but most of our examples are going to be focused, are going to be using as a case the offshore oil and gas production. Okay? Some of the things are applicable, some of the things are not, and we are going to have a short discussion. You're going to get also a paper, some extract of a book to read, and about what are the main differences, okay, between offshore and onshore. Some projects onshore, they are just like projects offshore. They are in the same way because of the connection, the isolation, the size, and everything. But sometimes they can be very, very different. You have some advantages in onshore projects that you don't have in offshore. Okay? Offshore, usually you don't have anything. So not only you can go and pinch one place and then start to produce, see if it's good, and then try to expand from it. Okay? You have to have a plan from the beginning when you go inside an offshore project. Okay? So that's part of the main difference. So most of our examples are going to be offshore and gas, oil and gas production, and typically from fields in Norway. Okay, we're going to use a lot of examples from fields in Norway, but some of the same principles can be applied for fields in offshore Africa, some offshore in the South China Sea, Australia, can be applied in the Gulf of Mexico. So the same thing can be applied some other places. So don't feel discouraged that you say, well, I'm never going to come back to Norway. I'm going to go and live in the South China Sea, or I'm going to live some other place. If you work on offshore, probably it's going to be relevant for you. Okay. So we want to decide on the main features of the field. Okay. And typically we have like a workflow for doing that. Okay. So then we have to define, typically we have to define what we call a KPI, some sort of a KPI. That's going to tell me something over which I make decisions. Okay? I have some indicator, and that indicator has to go up. If it goes up, then it means that I have some conditions, some features that are more attractive than others. Okay? Define KPIs for the project. Okay. The KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. Okay. We're going to see now what is it, but usually it's economy. Okay, it's an economic indicator. It's very, sometimes you try to create all kind of indicators, but usually you take decisions mainly based on economy. Okay, what gives you highest profit. Okay, that fulfills all the constraints. So you have to define KPIs that you're going to use. You have to collect information. Okay, and then you have to define, or you have to try to find out alternatives. What kind of alternatives do I have? Okay. Then you have to analyze data or analyze evidence. Okay, you get maybe some more information, you try to process that information, you try to create models that give you that process that information, and finally you have to choose an alternative. Okay. So that process is actually repeated. Usually I don't define KPI, sometimes I do, but actually that process is repeated many times during the field decision development process. Okay, collecting information, which is expensive, defining alternatives. Initially I might have some alternatives, but I might have some other options, talking new technology, talking to other people, sharing information with other companies. Here it will be modeling, something that here at NTNU, and I guess in your also universities where you took your previous studies, we make a lot of emphasis on that. Okay, we have simulators, we have where we take all of this data and we try to get some more information, something that is valuable. Okay, some other type of data. We take the subsurface information, fluid information, and we try to convert that into production profiles, for example. Okay, because we cannot say much with how much. Okay, we have so big pocket of rock where we have oil and gas. Okay, we have to get how much can we get from this rock. Okay, what is going to be the production profile in time, and that will allow me to calculate what is going to be my revenue from this field. Okay. So we're going to be working on that quite a lot, okay, on that part, on the development part. And on operations, I'm just going to give some, along the lectures, I'm going to give some comments on operations. But operations actually is completely different mindset. I also have to define KPIs, okay, and it's also some sort of economic indicator, but can be also uptime, can be also revenue, can be cost, can be spills, can be anything. Okay? But here I have another completely different mindset. Okay, what do I try to do here? I'm trapped with an existing system. Here I have, on the development part, I have the sky. In a way, the sky is the limit. Everything is very flexible. Okay, I have a lot of options. If you try to make, and that's something that many people show, you try to make a plot with time. Initially you have almost no information, and then you have a lot of information. Okay. But you have the flexibility you have in the system initially is almost infinite. Okay? Initially you have a lot of flexibility. But as the time progresses and I have almost no information, so how can you take a good decision not knowing what you have? If it's maybe gas, maybe oil, how big it is, what's the permeability of the rock, how much I will be able to produce, what is the ultimate recovery? I don't know at this point. But I can choose from many different options. I can choose to have 3, 20 wells, 40 wells. I can choose to have 2 platforms, 1 platform. I can have many options. But then as time passes, I have to take decisions based on very little information. And that's something that is very special for field when developing a field during this phase. Okay? I have to take a lot of decisions. I have to reduce that flexibility, okay, depending on little amount of information. Okay? Remember, most of the information I get, when do I get it? You have been working, like, you know, with those of you who here are reservoir guys, reservoir engineers. Yeah. So what do you work in the operation phase? Mostly. You dream about having a history match model, right? Your reservoir model that you're making, you dream that it will exactly reproduce your production, right? And that's where you get most information. If you try to match these two, you say, well, now I have my model is actually exactly representing what I have in the field. Okay? But that I have only very late, when I don't have any more flexibility. Okay? So that's like a paradox that we have. So we are in the operations, we are stuck with an existing system. Okay? We have to two things. We have to reduce the impact of the we are always going to make poor decisions. Okay, sometimes some things that are not ideal, but we have to reduce the impact of the disadvantages of the system. Okay, and we have to maximize or exploit exploit the advantages that I have on my system. That's those things that I actually design in a proper way. Those things I have to try to exploit. Okay. Okay, let's call it maybe not disadvantages, but maybe deficiencies is a better word. System deficiencies. Okay, so we try to optimize, or even not optimize. You cannot maybe assure that that's the optimum, the best you can get, but I want to effectivize, if that might not be even a word, but we try to make it more effective. Effectivize production. Okay, so just be aware of these two mindsets and the difference we have. We have a lot of information here, but our system is frozen. Okay? We have maybe other priorities, we have other KPIs, but our system is frozen. So we have to are stuck. Any change we want to make is going to be too costly. Okay, or it's usually going to be very costly. While here I have the sky is the limit. But then when I take decisions, I have very little information, and I have a variety of scenarios that they can play out. I can have a big reservoir, I can have a small reservoir. I can have, very tight formation, very nice formation. Okay. So let's go to the life cycle, and that's probably something that you can already have an intuition how it looks like. The life cycle of a hydrocarbon field. Okay, what do we start with usually? We have pre-exploration, something that we call pre-exploration. Okay, then we have exploration phase. And sometime, if we are lucky enough, or if we have a smart geophysicist, then we have a discovery someplace here. Okay, we have some pre-exploration phase, exploration phase, then we have a discovery, then we have, if everything goes fine, then what is the next step usually? Appraisal. Okay, that I want to see that discovery that I made. What are the characteristics of that discovery? How big it is? What properties does it have? How is the fluid? After that, what do I have? If everything, yeah? Somebody said something? It's okay to developing, but we have one part before, which is the planning, okay? Field planning. What we call development might be everything, but let's call first field planning. If we have, at some point we have some indication in the appraisal, right, that is worth continuing with that, we go now to the field planning, and that's where our course is going to be focused on, okay, and this phase. Okay, then after we have field planning, we have field construction. Okay, what do we have after? After, well, we have no choice but to have operations. And after operations, we have decommissioning and abandonment. Sorry, is the handwriting okay? Okay, yep. Don't have the best handwriting, but I hope you can understand. Okay, so we are going to go in detail into that process, and also I want to say that there are some tasks you have been taking some courses, or you will take some courses also, that they look into very much into the pre-exploration and exploration. Okay, we have an NTNU seismic interpretation, we have basin modeling, we have geology, we have many things that are working courses that are working on that area. Okay, so my intention, I'm not going to repeat, I'm not going to go deep into those. Okay, I will say that that will be covered by other courses. Also, you have during the late stages of field planning, you have, and also you have petrophysics, log interpretation. Then in the late part, you have reservoir modeling. Okay, so I assume all of those we are going to put less weight, or actually we're not going to discuss them that much in this course. Okay, even though they are important. Okay, you see here, that's actually the starting point to get the field planning. So don't underestimate the importance. The thing is that this is discussed in detail in some other courses we have at the NTNU. Okay, so I'm going to focus now on usually when we have a discovery and we have making appraisal and how to plan the field from an early phase to a more or less mature phase. The other thing I want to tell you here is that the time scale operations, okay, depending on how, but can be something between 5, 30, maybe we have fields now in the North Sea approaching 40 years. Okay? So don't let the size of the square tell you something about the length. Okay, that's going to be something that maybe takes a long time. Field construction might be something between, I don't know, between 3, maybe 6 years. Okay, and all the rest, maybe planning 2, maybe 3, 5 years, appraisal also. Maybe you have some area that it takes a long time to explore. But the thing is that the time scale can be very dependent, and usually operations is the one that has the longest time scale. Okay, so all of the rest is very short compared to operations. So that also shows you the complexity. Operations, I get a lot of data, but I'm stuck with the system. Okay? While here, this happens relatively quickly compared to operations, but I have to take a lot of decisions during that period. Okay. Yeah, so let's look a bit more in detail. The way I do okay, so field planning, let's put here, maybe start to put some so how it is executed in real life. Okay, so before, just after appraisal, after field planning, you have a point called, the way the process is structured, we use DG, decision gate. Did you have any kind of economy project management course where they talk about decision gate? No. Okay, DG stands for decision gate. Okay, and it's a process that actually I divide in stages, my process. Okay? And at the end of each stage, I have to have this decision gate, where I can decide to continue, I can decide to abandon, or I can decide to wait, or maybe redo one stage. Okay? And that usually have to design. I have a team, the field development team might be very heterogeneous. I have different people from different disciplines, but at the end, that team has to give like a summary, and that summary is evaluated in some sort of a board in a company. Okay? That they decide if to go forward or not. I think that some people call it the Ericsson process, okay? Process for project management. Okay? But basically we have decision gates in every stage where we decide continue forward, just stop and abandon, maybe wait and redo the phase. I have usually these four choices. Okay, and this one we have here is decision gate 0. Ericsson or Ericsson, I don't remember now, but I think it's in Wikipedia. If you go to decision gate, it tells you some history about this process. Okay. Okay, and then on the planning, we have, usually it's not only one box because it's so complex that we have several boxes. And we have, the first part is feasibility studies. Okay. Then we go to concept planning. Then we go to pre-engineering. And in all of them we have some DG gates, okay, decision gates. 1, we have DG2, and we have DG3. That's typically offshore, Norway, some other places. That's how these projects are arranged. Let's see if I hope I got it correct. Okay, we have some Norwegian terms. Also, you're going to be working, some of you in Norway, so you need to get the Norwegian nomenclature. So this one is called BOK, which stands for Beslutning om Konkretisering. Beslutning . Okay, feasibility studies, the main thing is, so first DG1, let's say what happens. We will see more in detail what happens in each decision gate, okay? But basically, DG0 is simply to say, is there a business case here? Do we have a field? And then we have to decide if we have a business case. Maybe we found a very nice field, but it's in some war zone that I cannot exploit, okay? So that's to define either if I have a business case or not. That's why all of these phases, usually all these 3 steps, usually are called business identification phase. Okay, business case identification. Okay, then we have DG1, Beslutning om Konkretisering, not on. That is basically try to define if there are any feasible concepts how to produce this reservoir, how to produce these reserves. And if they are, how many they are, how many options do we have. Okay? We're going to go in detail on that, but just to let you know where we are. Then we take a decision, yes, there is, okay, and we want to continue with those, okay, where there is something that brings value to that project. And then we have BOV, which stands for Beslutning om Videreføring, which the translation will be on execution or continuation. Okay. And in that, DG2 is very critical. Here I have a lot of options. Here I have concept planning. I have to evaluate all of these options, compare these options, see which one is the most likely, the one that gives most value. And this sometimes might take 1 year only, okay, or 2 years. So then you have to take a decision on which option is the one I'm going to choose. And from there, everything will be locked from DG2. Okay? We're going to have the break soon, so don't worry. I see that you're already tired. Okay? Then comes, after you have selected one option, Then we go to the pre-engineering phase that we have to define, go in detail to try to define all the details of that choice, of that concept that I have. That means what kind of platform I'm going to need. So what are the technical requirements for that platform? Okay. If I want to buy a platform, I don't go to the shelf and buy a platform, but I have to say I need a platform to handle this amount of oil, gas, and water. I need it to have the following facilities. I need it to deal with this amount of crude. I want it to have dehydration. I want it to have so many pumps, so many compressors. You have to make like a requirement list, okay? A list of technical requirements that you need. And that's the pre-engineering. And after that, I go to DG3, where I have beslutning om genomföring, om execution. Okay. Where I finally sanction and I say, yes, I'm going to execution. Yes, I'm going to go forward with my project, or no, I'm going to wait. Something major is only something major happens. Usually I take the decision in DG0 to go forward, but if I already passed DG2, DG1, and DG2, that means I have already done my homework. I have already one concept that might work to develop the field. Okay. Then we have, okay, so in the field construction, that was for the planning, and those are the phases that I have on the planning. And on the construction, sorry for the mess, but you will see it together in one page just now. Then we have, instead of the pre-engineering, we have the detailed engineering. I go for it. I have all my plans. Everything is fixed. The type of platform I want, how I want to produce the field. And then I go to the construction. And then I go finally to the phase of testing and startup. And finally, before we go to operations, we have one last decision gate, DG4. I don't know how that's called in Norwegian, but basically I decide if to operate the field or not. As you can imagine, has to be something very dramatic that happened here during this phase to decide not to produce the field. Okay, maybe a huge cost overrun, maybe there was an accident, maybe there was a natural disaster that caused something, but really has to be something very, very major to decide not to go forward with the project. Okay. We have had some cases in the Norwegian continental shelf that have large overrun, that they have large expenses, that the project really is in negative, maybe won't be profitable, but they still, everything is in place, so they still have to go and start to make money. Okay. Okay, so remember, that's the main panorama. Pre-exploration, exploration, appraisal, field planning, construction, operations, decommissioning, and abandonment. And within field planning, I have these three boxes, which are very important. The first one, before, DG0. Do I have a business case or not at all? The next one, feasibility studies. I try to map all concepts that I might have. Which ones might be relevant for this field? I don't care. It can be using electric, I don't know, might be producing with a balloon, producing with a FPSO, putting a pipeline all the way to the US. Crazy ideas. Everything goes there. I try to see which one is the best. Then DG2, I try to refine, compare these concepts, see which one is the most likely, the one that will have most profit, the one that will be most attractive, and from there unlocked. DG2, I select one, and then I refine and go through only that one. DG3, we will see something very special happens here. You have to issue, at this stage, you have to issue the PDO Okay, which stands for Plan for Development and Operations. And that's something I say, that's the plan, I have to produce my field. And you gave it to the authorities, they have to approve it, at least here in Norway, and they have to give you feedback on this report, and then they tell you, yes, you can go forward. And then I take the decision to go forward. Construction is split into 3 phases. Detail engineering, I have to refine. If here I made it on this, what kind of platform, what kind of facilities, here I go to the level of even screw, okay? I need so many screws for this vessel. This vessel will have this thickness, okay? It will have this interior protection, okay? Construction, testing and startup, and finally have DG4 just before operation. That clear? Okay, so now let's take a break. I think you're tired, so, and we come back 11, let's say 10 or 11 for the last part, okay, of the course, of this